This study focuses on the association between cooperative gameplay and empathy. Cooperative video games are becoming increasingly more popular, which is probably what makes them an interesting area to research. 76% of kids play these cooperative video games, and of this 76%, 65% play in the same room as their team member, 27% play with a team member over the internet, and 8% use other methods. First, we need to understand the difference between cooperative games and traditional video games. In cooperative video games, there's more than one human player, and those human players have to communicate amongst one another. They're all working towards some common goal, and they all have to help each other to maintain that goal. In traditional video games, it's typically a person versus a computer. There's no communication since there is no team, and that individual is working towards his own goal. The point of this research was to prove that even though these games are violent, when we play them in groups, they still increase our empathy. So when we play them in groups, it almost cancels out the negative effect that the violence of the game has on us. Study 1 directly focused on whether or not team play can cancel out the negative effect of violence in video games. The researchers predicted that the subjects playing the violent video game in single-player mode would have decreased empathy compared to those playing a neutral video game in single-player mode. They also predicted that multiplayer mode would cancel out the decreased empathy effect of single-player mode in a violent video game, since the subjects would be playing cooperatively. The subjects were randomly assigned to one of three groups. The first group were subjects that were playing a violent video game cooperatively as a team. The second group were subjects playing the same violent video game but in a single-player mode. And the third group were subjects playing a neutral video game in a single-player mode. The violent video game that the first two groups were playing is called Destroy, which is a Bomberman-like video game in which the object of the game is to kill monsters with bombs. The third group played a more neutral and strategic game called Der Siedler or The Settlers.
Produktionsstätten wie diese Mine errichten wir nicht mehr einzeln, stattdessen bauen wir ein Hauptgebäude, hier eine Berghütte, an die wir die gewünschten Arbeitsstätten anflanschen. Hier sind es 3 Goldbergwerke. Jetzt
So in study 1, first, the participants played their assigned video game for 15 minutes. And then they were asked questions that assessed their likingness of the game, their arousal from the game, and their mood, all on a scale of 1 to 7. Then, the participants read about a single mother and her children in Bangladesh. The participants rated how much they felt sympathetic, warm, compassionate, soft-hearted, and tender towards the family, all on a scale of 1 to 10. Of course, at the end, the participants were thanked and debriefed after the experiment was over. The results from study 1 were just as the researchers predicted. Those who played a violent video game cooperatively as a team reported more empathetic concern than those people who played the same video game on their own. Also, the people in the cooperative team player category didn't report less empathy than the people in the single-player neutral video game condition. If anything, they actually reported more empathy. The researchers also noted that these effects were not due to differences in mood or arousal. Study 2 is a little bit different from Study 1. In Study 2, the researchers didn't focus on violence. They actually used a neutral video game, and they wanted to see if cooperative gameplay still had the same effect on empathy when violence wasn't involved at all. In Study 2, the researchers' prediction was generally the same as Study 1. They thought that even if the game was neutral, the people who were playing in a team would still have a higher empathy compared to those who were playing by themselves. Subjects were randomly assigned to two groups. Both groups played the same neutral video game, but in one group, the subjects played by themselves, while in the other group, the subjects played as a team. The subjects from the team play group played New Super Mario Bros. For the Wii.
NES. So how is the game different in multiplayer? Obviously, you're going to have to work together to get through a stage. Some of the out-of-reach power-ups and giant gold coins can be snagged with teamwork by either bouncing off each other or picking up and throwing a buddy. You'll definitely have to manage power-ups better, and if one person dies, another player will have to release them from their bubble prison. The bubble can also be a strategic thing. If a platforming section is particularly tricky, players can get in a bubble at any time by hitting A and relying on the other players to get them through it alive. This opens up the game for friends and families who want to play together no matter what their skill level is. The new Super Guide mode also makes the game much more.
The subjects who played the game alone played the same game, but they played it in single-player mode.
Nintendo hasn't fiddled with their successful 2D platforming formula too much, with gameplay additions limited to tweaks rather than total revamps. You've still got to run, jump, bounce, glide, and swim your way from point A to point B while avoiding environmental obstacles and enemies. This task requires increasingly accurate timing, intricate planning, and ninja-like reflexes as you progress through the game's 8 varied.
For Study 2, the participants again played their assigned video game for 15 minutes. They were then questioned about how much they liked the game on a scale of 1 to 4 and answered one item that measured their mood on a scale of 1 to 9. Then they read an essay about a man who broke his leg during an intramural football game and he was suffering really badly. The participants rated how much they felt sympathetic, warm, compassionate, soft-hearted, and tender towards the man on a scale of 1 to 10. Of course, at the end of the study, participants were thanked and debriefed. Study 2 showed that even if you're playing a neutral video game, playing as a team versus playing by yourself increases empathy. And to tie it all together, although there are negative effects to playing violent video games, if they're played the right way, such as in groups, those negative effects can be canceled out. This should definitely be kept in mind when rearing children. Another thing to keep in mind is that this study was just to prove association, so it does not prove causation. In order to prove causation, a much more detailed study would have to be done.